Welcome to the Deep Dives. I'm Mac.
And I'm Marion.
Today, we're cracking open a book that's, well, it's arguably one of the most influential guides to human interaction ever written. Published way back in 1937. It's Dale Carnegie's How to Win Friends and Influence People.
You know, the backstory on this book is pretty wild, seriously. Carnegie and the publishers, they thought maybe 5,000 copies would sell.
Wow, really? Only 5,000?
Yeah. Instead, it just blew up. I mean, an overnight international sensation, sold millions for decades.
That kind of staying power, nearly 90 years later. It tells you something, doesn't it?
It really does. It tells you it hit on something fundamental. It truly, as the source says, touched a nerve and filled a human need beyond just its time.
And it wasn't some, quick list of tips thrown together either. Carnegie put in serious work.
Oh, absolutely.
He devoured everything. Ancient philosophers, modern psychologists, family court records, even biographies of leaders like Caesar and Teddy Roosevelt.
Over 100 bios just for TR, I read.
Incredible.
And he hired a researcher for a year and a half, just digging through libraries, finding context.
But the real gold, it seems, came from actually talking to people.
Right. Interviewing scores of successful folks firsthand, inventors like Marconi, Edison, political leaders, FDR's right-hand man, James Farley, business giants like O&D Young, movie stars, Clark Gable, Mary Pickford, even explorers. He wanted to know, practically, how do these people actually deal with other people? What works?
So our mission then, in this deep dive, is to take all that wisdom he gathered and pull out the absolute core, the timeless insights on human nature.
Exactly. Why does a book from 1937 still offer so much value to you today?
What are those foundational principles that, well, just haven't changed?
Let's jump right in. Carnegie stresses this right from the start. This isn't just a book you read passively.
No.
He calls it a working handbook on human relations. The goal isn't just getting information. It's about fundamentally changing your habits.
Right, it's active. You don't just read it once and put it down.
No way. He says you need a deep desire to really master these principles. Read chapters multiple times. Stop, think, try to apply the suggestions, underscore things, review it regularly.
And most importantly, use it. Daily application. He even suggested framing it as a lively game.
A game. Interesting.
Yeah, because you're essentially learning a new skill, trying out a new way of interacting.
Yeah.
And that takes effort, persistence, like learning any game.
Okay, so let's unpack some of those foundational principles he found. One of the first, and maybe one of the toughest ones, is about dealing with faults and mistakes. His advice, simply put, don't criticize, condemn, or complain.
Oof. That goes against the grain, doesn't it? Our basic wiring seems to be about rationalizing our own actions and, pointing fingers.
Totally. It's almost instinctive.
Absolutely. And Carnegie gives these incredible examples, like Two-Gun Crowley, this really dangerous criminal surrounded by police.
Yeah.
He writes a note saying he had a weary heart, but a kind one that would do nobody any harm. He didn't condemn himself at all.
Unbelievable. Even Al Capone, public enemy number one, saw himself as a public benefactor.
Wow.
And Warden Laws from Sing Sing prison. He said few criminals he knew saw themselves as bad. They rationalized, explained, justified everything, even to themselves.
It's not just criminals, though, is it? He mentions that huge political blow-up between Theodore Roosevelt and President Taft.
Right, which split the Republican Party, maybe even influenced World War I. Huge consequences.
Yet Taft felt he couldn't have done anything differently. He justified his actions.
That's Carnegie's point. Crystal clear. Criticisms are like homing pigeons. They just fly right back you.
Huh. Homing pigeons. I like that.
Yeah. The person you criticize, they'll likely just dig in, justify themselves, and maybe, subtly or not, condemn you right back.
Lincoln seemed to get this. Instead of blasting the Southerners during the Civil War, he'd say something like, "Don't criticize them. They are just what we would be under similar circumstances."
That perspective shift, it changes everything.
It really does. Think about after Gettysburg. General Meade missed this golden opportunity to crush Lee's army. Lincoln was apparently furious.
Understandably.
He drafted this scathing letter pouring out all his disappointment. But he never sent it.
And why not?
He realized criticizing Meade wouldn't achieve anything useful. It would just make Meade defensive, maybe resentful.
Impair his ability to lead effectively.
Maybe even push him to resign. Lincoln chose empathy, perspective, over the impulse to critique. He saw the bigger picture.
It's such a powerful lesson, even today. That urge to criticize is strong, but it rarely actually works in changing behavior or improving relationships. Often it just backfires.
Which leads perfectly to the flip side, doesn't it? If you are the one who messed up.
Then admit it, quickly and emphatically.
Carnegie is pretty blunt about this. He says, any fool can try to defend his or her mistakes, and most fools do.
Huh, true enough.
But admitting your error, owning it, that, he says, raises one above the herd.
It takes humility, for sure, but it's amazing how it can diffuse a situation. The source mentions an engineer.
Yeah.
Whenever something went wrong, he'd immediately tell his boss it was his fault. Instead of getting chewed out, the boss respected him more for it.
There's a kind of nobility in it, like Robert E. Lee taking full responsibility for Pickett's charge at Gettysburg. It shifts the energy from blame to finding a solution.
Absolutely. It bypasses the other person's need to prove you wrong. You take control by taking responsibility first.
Okay, let's shift gears. What about understanding what actually motivates people? Carnegie quotes John Dewey and William James on this.
Ah, yes, what they identify as perhaps the deepest urge in human nature.
Which is?
The desire to be important. Or, as William James put it even more strongly, the craving to be appreciated.
Craving, not just a wish or a desire, a craving.
Exactly. He says it's almost as fundamental as needing food or sleep, yet, tragically, it's seldom gratified for most people.
He even mentions the extremes people might go to for this feeling, suggesting some might actually go insane to find that feeling of importance in a fantasy world if reality denies it.
The story of the patient who believes she married into English aristocracy as Lady Smith is pretty stark, isn't it? An extreme illustration of that deep need.
So the principle that flows from this is give appreciation.
Honest and sincere appreciation, yes. And Carnegie draws a really sharp line between that and flattery.
Okay, what's the difference?
Flattery is insincere, it's shallow, selfish. It comes from the teeth out, as he says, everyone sees through it, and it's universally condemned.
Right.
Appreciation, though, is genuine. It comes from the heart out, it's unselfish, focused on the other person, and it's universally admired. General Obregon's quote is relevant. Don't be afraid of enemies who attack you. Be afraid of the friends who flatter you.
Good one.
Yep.
And the big example he uses is Charles Schwab.
Right. Paid $1 million a year by Andrew Carnegie back then. Not primarily for his steel knowledge.
But for his people skills.
Exactly. His ability to deal with people. And Schwab's secret, he said, the way to develop the best that is in a person is by appreciation and encouragement.
He never criticized anyone.
Apparently not. He was anxious to praise, but loath to find fault. He was hearty in his approbation and lavish in his praise.
Wow.
And he put it so powerfully. I have yet to find the person who did not do better work and put forth greater effort under a spirit of approval than he would ever do under a spirit of criticism.
That resonates. We wouldn't let our families or employees starve for food.
But we often withhold the appreciation they crave almost as much. It's about noticing and acknowledging the good, the effort.
The source had that story about Pamela Dunham and the janitor.
Oh, yeah, that's a great one. Criticism got her nowhere.
Right.
But when she started praising his occasional good work, specifically in front of other people,
What happened?
he felt seen, appreciated. It encouraged him so much that he started doing an excellent job consistently. Just that little bit of sincere appreciation unlocked his potential.
It taps right into that deep need to feel valued, doesn't it?
Precisely.
Okay, building on that.
Yeah.
Let's talk about actively connecting with others. Carnegie's principle here feels almost too simple, but maybe it's not.
What is it?
Be genuinely interested in other people.
Ah, yes. Simple, but profound. Alfred Adler, the psychologist, apparently said that the individual who is not interested in their fellow humans is the one who has the greatest difficulties in life and causes the most injury.
Wow, that's strong.
He said all human failures spring from such individuals. And Carnegie adds, in a world often focused on self-interest, showing genuine unselfish interest gives you an enormous advantage because, frankly, there's little competition.
It sounds basic, but think about how rare it actually feels sometimes.
It is rare. The salesman story, Edward M. Sykes Jr., he kept a major account just by taking a minute to say hello and chat with the soda clerk and the sales clerk before seeing the owner.
Because they felt noticed.
Yeah, they felt he genuinely saw them as people, not just obstacles. So the clerk recommended him. It was that human connection.
Or the bank teller, Marie Petrocello, asking Mrs. Rosedale about her mother who was in the hospital.
Such a small thing. But that genuine concern built real loyalty to the bank. It's that personal touch.
And part of showing interest, a really crucial part, is remembering details about them, like their name.
Oh, absolutely critical. Carnegie states it plainly. The average person is more interested in his or her own name than in all the other names on earth put together.
So remembering it.
Is a subtle and very effective compliment. It says, you matter enough for me to remember.
And forgetting it, or worse, misspelling it.
A sharp disadvantage. It sends the opposite message. You're not that important.
Jim Farley, FDR's campaign manager, was legendary for this, wasn't he?
Totally. He apparently had a system. He could meet thousands of people and remember names, details about their families, their jobs.
That must have made people feel incredibly seen and valued. Huge for building political support.
Definitely. Even Andrew Carnegie, way back when he was young, used this. He organized neighborhood boys by giving them rabbits.
Rabbits.
Yeah, and naming the rabbits after the boys. Simple, but it made them feel recognized and engaged them.
That's clever. And the flip side is true, too. The source mentions an American bank manager in Paris.
Oh yeah, who wrote a scathing rebuke because his name was misspelled on a standard form letter. It shows how deeply people feel about their own name.
Or the example of Ken Nottingham using the cafeteria worker's name.
Right. It transformed her usual scowl into a smile just by acknowledging her individually. It's a small thing with a big impact.
And maybe the ultimate way to show genuine interest is just to shut up and listen.
Huh. Basically, yes. Be a good listener. Encourage others to talk about themselves.
Charles W. Eliot, the president of Harvard, said something about that, right?
He did. Exclusive attention to the person who is speaking to you is very important. Nothing else is so flattering as that.
Flattering in a good way, presumably, making them feel heard.
Exactly. Carnegie tells a story about talking to a botanist for an hour. He himself said hardly anything, just listened intently, asked questions.
And the result.
Afterward, the botanist told a friend that Carnegie was a most interesting conversationalist.
Even though he barely spoke.
Right, because he gave the botanist the gift of rapt attention. As the source says, few human beings are proof against the implied flattery of rapt attention.
It takes real effort, though. It's not just being silent.
No, it's active. Henry James observed Dr. Eliot listening and described it as not mere silence, but a form of activity. Hearing with his eyes as well as his ears. Fully engaged.
That kind of listening works at home, too, the source notes. With kids, partners.
Absolutely. Making someone feel truly heard is one of the best ways to show you value them.
Think about it from the other person's perspective. Carnegie says the people you are talking to are 100 times more interested in themselves and their wants and problems than they are in you and your problems.
Sad but true, probably. He uses the example of a toothache versus a famine.
Right. Your own small pain matters more to you personally than a huge tragedy far away. That fundamental self-focus is key to understanding how to connect with people.
Which brings us right back to a core idea that seems to weave through many of these principles.
Which is?
Arouse in the other person an eager want, and talk in terms of their interests. Try honestly to see things from their point of view.
Okay, this feels central. It's not about manipulating people.
No, not at all. It's about finding the win-win. It's not about what you want. It's about understanding what they want and showing them how they can get it, often by doing the thing you're suggesting.
So, focus on their needs, their desires, their perspective.
Precisely. Remember Carnegie negotiating his hotel ballroom rent?
Yeah, he didn't plead about his budget.
No. He focused entirely on the hotel's interests. The advantages they'd get by keeping him as a tenant prestige, reliable income versus the disadvantages if he left empty room, hassle of finding someone new. He framed it entirely from their perspective.
That makes sense. Or Stan Novak with his son Tim, the one dreading kindergarten.
Right. Instead of ordering him or forcing him, they talked about all the fun things Tim would get to do. Finger painting, songs, making new friends.
They aroused his eager want by talking in terms of his interests.
Exactly. Or Barbara Anderson applying for bank jobs.
She didn't just say, I need a job.
No. She wrote about how her specific skills could help the bank achieve its goals. She framed her value from their point of view. And boom, interviews at 11 out of 12 banks.
That's powerful, seeing things from their perspective. The debt collection lawyer example was amazing, too.
Yeah, facing this angry customer who wouldn't pay. Instead of arguing.
He put himself in the customer's shoes. He sympathized, listened to the guy's problems, saw it from his viewpoint.
And the customer's attitude completely shifted. He felt understood, not attacked. And then he volunteered to work out a payment plan.
It requires real empathy, doesn't it? Genuinely trying to see the world through their eyes. Dr. Nierenberg was quoted saying it's crucial for cooperation.
It is. Asking yourself, if I were in their situation, with their background, their pressures, how would I feel? What would I want? That can unlock so much understanding.
And that connects to another principle, doesn't it? Being sympathetic with their ideas and desires, even if you disagree.
Yes. Using what Carnegie calls the magic phrase. I don't blame you one iota for feeling as you do. If I were you, I would undoubtedly feel just as you do.
Can you always say that sincerely, though?
Carnegie argues you often can, because if you truly had their exact background, experiences, and current situation, you very likely would feel similarly. It acknowledges their feelings without necessarily agreeing with their conclusions.
It validates their emotional state.
Exactly. He suggests pity and sympathy for people who are irritated or unreasonable, thinking, there, but for the grace of God, go I. 3/4 of people, he claims, are just hungry for sympathy.
Like the story with the irate woman about Louisa May Alcott.
Right. Carnegie used that sympathetic approach, acknowledging her viewpoint first, validating her feelings about the mistake, and it completely disarmed her hostility, turned her into a friend.
Okay, so understand their viewpoint, sympathize with their feelings. What about when you need to actually lead or influence change more directly?
Well, one principle is to appeal to the nobler motives.
Nobler motives. What does that mean?
People generally like to think of themselves as fair, honest, decent, unselfish. Even as the source notes, figures like Jesse James or Al Capone tried to rationalize their actions in ways that made them seem less bad or even justified.
So you appealed to that self-image.
Exactly. Assume they want to do the right thing. The example of handling the customer complaint about a purchase is good here.
How did that go?
The store owner apologized sincerely, praised the customer's fairness and patience, and then appealed to his sense of fair play. He asked the customer to adjust the bill himself, as if he were the president of the company.
And the customer.
Adjusted it fairly. Because he was treated as fair and honest, he lived up to that expectation. Carnegie believed most people want to be honest and fair and will react favorably if you make them feel you see them that way.
Interesting. What about getting ideas across? Sometimes just stating facts isn't enough.
Definitely not. That's where dramatize your ideas comes in.
Showmanship.
Basically, yes. Make it vivid, interesting, memorable. The Philadelphia Evening Bulletin example. They didn't just say they had lots of news compared to ads.
What'd they do?
They created a visual pamphlet showing the actual ratio, made it dramatic. Or the rat poison display with live rat sales zoomed.
Okay, that's dramatic.
Or the salesman selling cold cream who, instead of reciting data, just dumped 32 competing jars on the buyer's desk, each tagged with research results. That got attention.
It breaks through the noise. And related to that maybe is throwing down a challenge.
Yes. Stimulating competition, appealing to the desire to excel, especially effective with people of spirit.
Like Charles Schwab getting mill production up.
Right. He just wrote the number of heats the day shift made on the floor with chalk, didn't say a word. The night shift saw it as a challenge and wanted to beat it.
Simple but effective. Competition and the desire to prove oneself are powerful motivators.
They really are.
Okay, we've covered a lot. Let's loop back to something you mentioned earlier, making faults seem easy to correct and praising improvement. That seems crucial for leadership.
Hugely important. Remember, abilities wither under criticism, they blossom under encouragement. It's about building confidence, not tearing it down.
Like the dance teacher minimizing mistakes, praising the rhythm, making the student feel like, okay, I could learn this.
Or Lowell Thomas telling Carnegie that playing bridge was no trick at all, linking it to memory skills Carnegie already had, making it seem less daunting, more achievable.
It's about framing the challenge positively.
And praising the slightest improvement. That positive reinforcement encourages more effort. The story of Dorothy Rublowski and the slow teller trainee.
Yeah, the trainee was struggling with balancing her drawer.
Right. But Dorothy praised her good customer contact skills first. That encouragement made the trainee feel valued and motivated her to work harder on the balancing, and she improved.
It's giving specific, sincere praise, not just vague flattery, pointing out exactly what was done well.
Exactly, like praising the printer's work by pointing out why it was superior. That makes the praise meaningful. It reinforces the desired behavior.
It ties back to giving someone a good reputation to live up to, doesn't it?
Yes, like Georgette LeBlanc telling Marie the dishwasher she had treasures within you. That belief, that positive expectation, was transformative for Marie,
Or Bill Parker going back to the difficult food market manager.
and giving him a reputation as the finest, fairest manager before making his request. The manager felt compelled to live up to that image.
It's amazing how consistent these themes are. It all comes back to understanding basic human drives.
It really does.
So wrapping this all up, why is this stuff, written nearly 90 years ago, still so incredibly relevant? Why are we still talking about it?
Because human nature fundamentally hasn't changed that much. The deep urges Carnegie identified, that need to feel important, the craving for appreciation, how we react defensively to criticism, our tendency to rationalize.
Those are still the same drives motivating us today.
Absolutely. The core problems he tackled. How do we handle disagreements constructively? How do we connect authentically? How do we influence people ethically? These are universal, timeless challenges.
And his methods work because they tap directly into those unchanging human truths.
Right. Think about those surveys mentioned. Adults consistently say they want to learn skills in human relationships, how to get along with and influence others. It's seen as essential for success, often more than just technical knowledge.
The skills Carnegie outlines aren't just soft skills or nice-to-haves. They're fundamental to navigating the human world effectively.
But it comes back to his first point, doesn't it? These aren't just concepts to understand intellectually.
No, they're habits, skills to be practiced.
It takes time and persistence and daily application. He called it attempting a new way of life.
The real value isn't just knowing these principles.
It's committing to actually living them, trying them out, seeing what works for you.
So here's a final thought for you, our listener, to take away from this deep dive. If even the most dangerous criminals instinctively rationalize their actions and see themselves in a favorable light, what does that tell you about how everyone you interact with, your colleagues, your boss, your family, your friends, even yourself, processes criticism and desperately seeks validation and appreciation?
That's a powerful thought.
How might remembering that fundamental universal human tendency change the way you approach your very next conversation today?
Something to really think about.
Thank you for joining us for this deep dive into Dale Carnegie.